First podcast's review of Blue in Stand Up Diva. We're going to get started right away. There's a lot of cards to go through. The first one is Audible. See, I practiced before I started it. Audible Zoe Angel. It's a level 1 Signy with power 3000. It is an angel. It's important. It's got a twice a turn ability. Whoa. Whenever you would draw a card other than the card that you draw on your draw phase, until end of turn, all Signy on your field get plus 1000 power. You're buffing them up for every card you draw. There's quite a bit of draw discard in Angels, so actually pretty relevant ability. You can do it up to twice, so you can give things a plus 2000 buff. We've talked before about plus 2000 buffs. They're not fantastic, but they can upgrade a 5000 to kill a level 7000, which is probably where it matters, as well as an 8000 to kill a 10,000. And I guess a 10,000 to kill a 12,000. Maybe I'm changing my mind about 2,000 buffs. If you can get it, cool. It's good. It's fine. The other auto ability is at the beginning of your attack phase, you may discard an angel if you do get to draw a card. That'll basically turn on either the first or the second twice a turn effect. Getting 1,000 power is not quite enough. Is this card any good? The answer is probably viable in an angel deck, but there's other better level 1 angels that you'd rather play in different colors, usually green if you're in the sort of like diagram colors, or red and white if you're in those sorts of colors. So it's going to fall by the wayside. It's not quite good enough. I'd say viable just because angels have less cards in that pool. Let's talk about Renault Azure Evil. It's a level 1, 2000 power. It's a demon that actually does matter in blue. It's got an auto ability, which is at the end of your turn. If there are 3 or more cards that were put into your deck to the trash this turn, you get to draw a card. So basically, if you're self-milling, great, enjoy. You get to draw an extra card. Its life burst is target 1 Signy on your opponent's field, down it, then draw a card. Is this card any good? The answer is, again, viable in a Demon's deck, but probably not playable elsewhere. Often you are pulling things out of your trash, and thus it's more important to do the milling yourself than it is to reward yourself for milling, because the things in your trash are the rewards for milling. So this is kind of win more in the mill decks. It's got a life burst, though. You might be hankering for some life burst, especially in blue. And this life burst is not a terrible life burst. It's actually okay. So this is playable in those decks, right? And by playable, it's still viable. It's not utterly playable. So it's a card to consider, but not one to super consider. It might be something you'd consider in the last set, because there's not so many good level 1 life bursts in blue that you might want. But then Hydras has come in and blown that out of the water. So if you want a good blue life burst, you probably want to play Hydras. If there are 2 or more level 1 Signys in your trash, this Signy gains plus 4,000 power. It's a level 1 that's 3,000 plus 4,000 power. That'll pop it up to 7,000. The new benchmark that you're trying to grade your level 1s is how much are they 5,000, how much are they 7,000. This is in blue. Blue has the ability to draw a discard. It also has enter costs that you can control things that will flow and go into your trash. It also has milling effects, so you'll find more things in the trash there as well. What I'm trying to say is it's tough to get 2 level 1 Signys in your trash turn 1, but pretty easy to have it in by level 2, or by turn 2. So this is, generally speaking, going to be a level 1 7,000 power in blue decks. Its life burst of looking at the top 3 cards of your library, revealing one of them, putting into your hand or the field, and the rest on the bottom in any order, is great in a defensive stance. And as we've discussed before, defensive life bursts, generally speaking, are better than offensive life bursts. So this is actually quite a good card. If you've been looking for some ways to fill out your life bursts in a blue-based deck, this is probably something to switch into. I will play this probably as a 3 of and 4 of in my Madoka decks moving forward, so consider it as a good card. The next one is Appetit, Natural Crystal. It is a Jewel Signy, which matters in blue, but not for right now. It is 8,000 power, level 2. Whenever the Signy becomes the target of an opponent's effect or ability, you can draw a card. The answer is unplayable. Drawing cards are nice. I guess it's cool that she's got a toothbrush and she's got teeth. Never mind, I've just changed my mind. This makes it so much worse. I do not like teeth. This is not a card I would play just because it's got teeth. But outside of that, you want things that when it targets your Signy, punishes your opponents. You don't really care about drawing an extra card. That's not something that's like, oh yeah, this is great. There are cards here that, for example, will target your Signy and then will allow you to enter charge to quote-unquote replace it. But unless it's actually like pulling a card out of your deck and putting it on the battlefield to replace it, or downing your opponent's Signy so it can't attack it, or vanishing the Signy that put it on there so theoretically it's closing down a lane, it's not a good Punisher effect. So this is going to be unplayable. It's a jewel, kind of worth mentioning, but I would say not consider it. Move past it. Code Maze Primora. This is another punishing effect that is actually better. So this is a good thing to just compare it to. It's a level 2 Signy, power 8,000. Its mech tone is Labyrinth. That doesn't really matter. It's got 2 auto abilities. At the end of your opponent's turn, target one of the Signies on your opponent's field and freeze it. When this Signy is vanished, it's another auto ability. Target one of your opponent's on the field, down it, and then freeze it. This is not amazing in freeze decks. Freeze decks want to have the opponent's Signies frozen probably on your turn to take advantage of it. We'll talk about that with code Waffle Ice in a bit. So if you're playing a freeze deck, this is something to consider, but you've got to take it down a peck because it's not going to immediately freeze your opponent's Signy. What it really does is punish your opponents for being offensive. If they decide to ignore it because they can't vanish it, or they don't want to vanish it, then what will happen is they'll still get the life burst, right? They'll still life crush you, but they will have to deal with the fact that their next turn is going to be hamstringed because you froze something. If they decide to vanish it, then if they, for example, did it with, I don't know, Nobunaga or something, then you're going to be able to down it and freeze it for no cost. So it's going to punish them for killing it. So because of that, you're basically saying you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you remove this, I'm going to close down a lane. And then you can sacrifice something and go ahead and put something in that open lane anyways, but it's going to cost you a card to do so. Or if you ignore it, you're going to be able to still move forward this turn, but it's going to hamper you later down the line. This is the punishing type of effect you actually want to see on your field. It's defensive. It has good use case scenarios in both ends of the world. I'm going to say that it's playable. Maybe it's somewhere slightly above viable, slightly below optimal. I think He Natural Element is probably still slightly better. But this is a good card. You should consider it if you're playing a defensive blue deck. Stingray Phantom, Water Phantom. Here you've got a level 2 that's power 10,000. It's got nothing in it's vanilla. It's got nothing in its text other than a life burst. It says your opponent chooses one of their Signy and puts it on the bottom of their deck. Okay, so this is lane opening in blue. It's sort of an offensive lane opening in blue. In the same way that Volcanic is lane opening in red, this does that same effect in blue. Blue is generally not an aggressive color, but if for some reason you're playing an aggressive blue deck, which Ray could be, then this is something to consider. I would put it down as viable because the other Signy that comes to mind is Folklore. And Folklore is probably a better card than this. Folklore is probably one of the best cards in Wixoss right now. So you might not have room for this. But if you are looking to be aggressive and you don't really care about Folklore, then this might be something you consider instead of Folklore. Let's talk about Liyue Zhong. It's a blue Signy, level 3, 10,000 power. Its enter abilities. If your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. Very rare to hit an opponent with 5 cards in their hand. You're really only going to be looking at control decks that are going to be doing that on turn 3. So if this is to counter a control deck, right, you might be playing a control deck and you're trying to counter a control deck, this card's good. This card will help you end those games against and be tech against control decks. But really, that's all its function is, so it's less good because of that. It also has a quite strong ability, but also it takes a lot of enter. Blue, colorless. If your opponent has 0 cards in their hand until end of turn, this Signy gains Assassin. it's quite a lot of things to do. Either on the enter, you want the opponent to have more cards in their hand than not, and then its action ability wants your opponents to have no cards in hands. It's got a little bit of an identity crisis. I'm going to say unplayable. Theoretically, I suppose you could find a niche, like I said, against a control deck with it, but I don't think it's an extreme niche. We've got Lapis Lazuli. Ugh, I know that there's a better way to pronounce that. I just fucked it up. But it's a level 3, power 12,000. Again, it's a jewel typage, and again, that matters. This is the first card we're seeing where the jewel typage really start to matters. And jewel, by the way, you're going to see needs to be red and blue, so it's like Ray decks that you're running it in. During your opponent's turn, when the Signy is vanished, you may put 1 red jewel from your hand onto the field. Its enter abilities don't activate. It's actually quite strong. Like I said, with punishing effects, you want to basically say, it's going to take you a while to get out of my lane cluttering zone. So you could put this down here. You could put down the one level 1 red jewel that then, if it gets targeted by a Signy on your opponent's field, vanishes that Signy, just to make it really, really put up shields. That's probably the best use case scenario for it right now. Its life burst is choose 1, target Signy on your opponent's field and down it. Your opponent discards a card from their hand. That's very strong. You rather make the opponent discard a card than draw a card in almost all cases. And then its second ability is draw 2 cards, which is better than drawing 1 card. Quite a strong Signy. I don't think there's enough jewels to really make it work. And the fact that it doesn't do blue jewel, so it's a little bit more open for a bunch of different options, means that you're going to have less of a time finding a deck for this, but it probably gets better in the future. So it's something to keep in your mind, especially if you like white-red tempo decks. Waffle Ice. Woohoo! We made it. This is a cooking mech-tone, by the way, if you like cooking mech-tones. There's not a ton of cooking mech-tones, but if you enjoy your Signy to also be food, enjoy. It's a level 3 power, 10,000. It's got a lot of text on it. Let's start with it. Auto ability, when one of your opponent's frozen Signy leaves the field, you put the top card of your deck underneath the Signy, you place it face up, so you get to see it. At the beginning of each attack phase, add 1 card from this Signy to your hand or put it into the enter zone. Its enter abilities, you can target up to 2 Signy on your opponent's field, and you can freeze it. Its life burst is target up to 1 Signy on your opponent's field, down it, freeze it, draw a card. Okay, let's start with the life burst and the enter effect. Those are the easiest ones to do. Fenrir's ability of being able to freeze 2 things on your opponent's field is quite good. The goal with freezing is freezing 2 or more. You're always trying to do that. So the fact that this does it on its own, great. Gets an A+ in that measure. Its life burst is target 1 of your opponent's Signy, freeze it, down it, draw a card. Also good. If you are a freezing deck, you want to play this. Its life burst adds to that freezing count, aka quite good. It's basically just, it's a self-contained engine in itself, and that's something you're looking for in your Signy. The other thing that you're looking for in your Signy is that it does stuff on your turn. And this kind of doesn't. I mean, it does in the fact that it freezes your opponent's field, and that is good. But the vanishing a Signy usually happens in combat. You're also playing blue, so when you are getting rid of something in blue, you're getting rid of something bottoming it to the opponent's deck, right? So it doesn't quite deal with its own color that way. Red vanishes things before you get into combat, and if that's the case and you're pairing it with red or black to vanish things, then you get the ability to enter charge. You're not going to be drawing the card, you're going to be enter charging with this. And that would be good. If this card red, if you made it do the fact that it came in, froze things, you killed something, then you got to enter charge off of it, this card is absolutely nuts. The fact that you're going to most times freeze things, go into combat, kill those 2 things, you're going to put 2 cards under this card, you hope it lives past your opponent's turn, then if it lives past their attack phase, you get to trigger off, enter charge something on their attack phase, it survives, goes back to your turn, then at the beginning of your attack phase, you get to enter charge that second card. This card is wildly fantastic, but that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen all that often. But it's the best option that you could do. It's a draw in freeze, which freeze needs more cards to have you drawn into. So if you are already doing freeze stuff, this is a very, very solid upgrade. I'm going to put this as viable. It's not quite as good as Royal Blue was, which was optimal. So you're going to be playing this less than Royal Blue. Firefly Squid, on the other hand, is going to be a staple. We're just going to get that out of the way right now. Firefly Squid is very good. It's a level 3, power 12,000, harmony 1 white Elrig. Its auto abilities at the beginning of your attack phase, you get to draw a card. That helps Ray out specifically, and something you want to do, plus blue likes drawing cards. And then its auto ability once a turn, when you discard one or more cards by your effect, your opponent's going to discard a card at random. Only does it once a turn. There's so much filtering in blue where you're drawing a card, discarding a card. It's maniacally easy to pull this off. And if you put 2 of these on the field, right, one of them is going to be downed, which stinks, it still will go off. And it will wall the opponent's deck. You're constricting their resources. This is a very, very strong card that you should consider in your all blue decks from here on moving forward. If you're not playing 4 of in your blue decks, you probably should have a reason that you're not playing 4 of. I could go on and on and on about why this is really good. Again, you kind of want that Harmony White Elrig, so you probably should be playing in things like Ray or Tamago. Madoka is going to have a hard time playing it because of the 1 White Elrig. But you could Dream Team with this, and again, like the other, like Komi, this is actually a good reason to Dream Team. So that is your Signy. Let's talk about the one last spell that exists, and that's Thirdling. Thirdling is a good card, and we're going to say optimal. You're going to want to think about using this maybe as a 1 of or 2 of in all your blue decks. Its cost is a single blue. While using the spell, you can exceed 4, and as we've talked about before, exceed 4 is a real cost. You can only exceed 4, and then you have 3 cards left to exceed, so you can't exceed 4 twice. You get to draw 2 cards and discard a card. Additionally, if you paid exceed 4, you can draw 3 cards. This is a strange one where both options on this card are good, and sometimes you'd rather not exceed. There are going to be times that you want to discard a card. Firefly Squid. And there are times that you want to put stuff in your trash. And if so, you have a draw 2 card, discard 1 card. That's very good. Maybe by playing some of these, you don't need to play Chime of the Blessed Key in your Hijikata decks. If you are looking to exceed 4 and draw 3 cards instead, that's fantastic. Drawing 3 cards for a single enter is stupidly strong, guys. So you want to consider putting this in your blue decks. You're probably not running it as a 4 of, right? You're probably running this as a 1 of or 2 of. Decks that were running Trouble before this, just to get some extra draw, get them into the late game, allow them to keep up with these mid-range or beat these mid-range or control decks. We'll probably think about using this or using Trouble in order to do this type of thing. So this should be added to your cap. I don't think it's necessarily a staple, but it is quite optimal. So you should consider playing this in your blue decks. And that's all the blue cards that we have. If you guys want to keep watching the series, you can check out the playlist, see all the other reviews that we've done in this set. Let me know, what's your favorite blue card in here? What are you really thinking about running? Is Code Waffle Ice enough to put you on doing more Frozen type shenanigans? Or are you more excited for Firefly Squids and just general blue good stuffs?